What if I told you that the most powerful rival to Haribo didn't come from Germany or Japan, but from a small factory in northwest Indiana, built by a man who used to pour concrete for a living? In 2014, Louis Vuitton dropped 120,000 gummy bears into a single artwork. But those bears weren't Haribo. They weren't Trolley. They weren't Mars. They were Albanese. That moment marked the beginning of a candy revolution, one that could dethrone Haribo after more than 100 years of dominance. So today, let's dive deep into the untold story of Scott Albanese, the man who turned failure, flavor, and faith into a global candy empire. But before we begin, if you love powerful business stories, underdog triumphs, and stories that change how you see the brand around you, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. Because this is the story of how one man turned sugar and gelatin into a billion-dollar rebellion. Scott Albanese was born in northwest Indiana, the son of hard-working Italian immigrants. His childhood was steeped in grit, family, and faith. In his 20s, he owned a small construction business, a stable job, steady income, the kind of path most people would stay on. But deep down, Scott wanted more. Something creative, something fun, something that made people smile. And so, in 1983, while the U.S. economy was just crawling out of its worst recession since the Great Depression, Scott made the biggest gamble of his life. Unemployment was over 10%. Interest rates were sky high at 12%. Families were cutting spending, and luxury treats were the last thing anyone wanted. And yet, Scott bet it all on candy. Back then, the U.S. candy market was dominated by giants: Haribo, Mars, and Trolley. They owned the shelves, the factories, and the customers. But Scott saw something no one else did. He noticed that every gummy candy tasted the same: cheap, artificial, and forgettable. He believed people deserved better. At first, Albanese relied on suppliers for his ingredients, but their careless quality nearly destroyed his small startup. Suppliers cut corners. Deliveries were late. Formulas failed. Finally, he'd had enough. He fired every one of them and made a bold decision that would change his destiny. He would become his own supplier. No more shortcuts. No more compromise. It was a huge risk, but it gave him one thing his competitors didn't have: control. The U.S. gummy market in the 80s was standardized. Everyone used the same cheap gelatin and synthetic flavors. But Scott Albanese wanted real fruit flavor. Bright, juicy, authentic. Experts laughed at him. Flavor chemists said gelatin would dull natural flavor. Distributors warned he'd price himself out of the market. Even Haribo dismissed his dream as a gimmick. But Scott didn't care. He wasn't chasing money. He was chasing perfection. So, in 1986, he converted part of his tiny facility into a lab. He began experimenting with flavor houses, testing hundreds of flavor combinations. He modified machinery to use lower heat, protecting the delicate natural taste. Night after night, batch after batch, he failed. But each failure taught him something new. Then, in 1988, he made his breakthrough. Scott discovered a cornstarch tray coating that softened gummies and released their natural fruit flavor. It changed the texture, the taste, everything. Finally, he had done it. He'd created the softest, juiciest, most flavorful gummies in America. But Albanese wasn't done. Through the 1990s, he became obsessed with perfecting three things: clarity, chew, and precision. While Haribo focused on mass production, Albanese focused on craftsmanship. He invested heavily in R&D, partnered with European engineers, and built custom machines that could deliver flawless consistency. He refused artificial colors, instead using plant-based hues. He refused cheap fillers, choosing pure fruit extracts. He was building something that felt luxurious, but for everyone. By 2000, his team opened a new, modern factory, fully equipped to take on the giants. This was his big moment. He expected lines of customers waiting to taste the future of candy. But when the doors opened, nobody came. The empty factory floor echoed with doubt. Years of sacrifice, innovation, and faith, for what? Most entrepreneurs would have given up. But Scott didn't. He realized something critical. People didn't know his name yet. So he shifted focus from production to awareness. With limited money, he couldn't afford big ads. So he turned to the oldest form of marketing there is, word of mouth. He sold locally, gave out samples, connected with customers one by one. And slowly, a movement began. People couldn't stop talking about how good they tasted. Soft, juicy, bursting with real fruit flavor. Local news caught on, then regional stores, then national distributors. Before long, Walmart, Walgreens, and Jelly Belly came knocking. And Albanese had earned a new title, the world's best gummies. Then came the call that changed everything. In 2014, Louis Vuitton wanted to create a massive art installation, one that symbolized color, creativity, and craftsmanship. They needed something bold, playful, and premium. Their solution? Albanese gummies. 120,000 gummy bears were used to create a giant stained glass artwork inside Louis Vuitton's Tokyo Museum. The installation shimmered with color, light, and imagination. A perfect metaphor for Albanese's journey. From a small-town factory to global luxury art, Albanese had arrived. The world took notice. Media outlets called him the Willy Wonka of Indiana. And sales exploded. But the story doesn't end there. When Haribo saw Albanese's rise, they launched an aggressive counterattack. They introduced new flavors, sour multipacks, and vegetarian gummies. They tried to appeal to Gen Z with trendy packaging. But there was a problem. Haribo was still stuck in the past. Their gummies were firm, dense, and nostalgic, but not exciting. Albanese's were soft, smooth, and bold. Millennials and Gen Z didn't want grandpa's candy. They wanted innovation. And that's exactly what Albanese gave them. As of 2025, Albanese Candy makes $131.6 million annually and employs nearly 400 people. It's still privately owned, still run with the same family values that started it all. But now it's not just a candy company. It's a symbol of what happens when passion meets patience. Haribo may have history, but Albanese has momentum. And in the world of business, that's far more dangerous. Because in the end, the race for the crown of world's best gummies isn't about who came first. It's about who refuses to stop innovating. So, will Albanese dethrone Haribo? Time will tell. But one thing is certain. The world is watching, and the gummy revolution has just begun. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the story behind Albanese Candy, hit like, subscribe for more inspiring business stories, and comment below. Who do you think makes the better gummy, Haribo or Albanese? Until next time, keep believing in your craft, because sometimes all it takes is one bold flavor to change everything.